Hello, everybody, and welcome to our monthly LinkedIn Live. This one, I wanted to tell you a story first. So, I used to be a big proponent of a work-life balance. For me, that was a very clean way to set certain boundaries, to have some compartment, kind of to put things in compartments. Until that didn't work for me, and I've noticed some articles and conversations about integration. And I got curious in what that means to me and in my life. So that's the topic that we're actually going to cover today. And the topic and the title that we came up with was Beyond the Balance Myth, Embracing Integration for Greater Impact. My name is Tatiana Sinikovic, and I am an executive and leadership coach. And I support leaders to find mindful tools to navigate their personal professional challenges and changes in a conscious and joyful way. And today I have a terrific colleague joining me who I am really happy to introduce. Please meet Tran Nguyen, and she is the visionary Chief Empowerment Officer and co-creator of SIVA Group. She's a trailblazer buzzing with ideas that I can attest to, a travel bug, and a lover of new adventures. And leading an international team, she's spearheading the creation of innovative ecosystems that serve self-employed professionals worldwide. A little bit about her background. She has a very diverse corporate background in Australia and co-established a successful management consulting practice in Indochina. Her journey reflects her relentless pursuit of excellence and passion for positive change. That we talk a lot when we meet. Her heart-centered leadership approach, rooted in selfless service and compassion, creates a supportive and caring community where individuals uplift and support each other. Welcome, and it's lovely to have you join me today.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It's my
Is there
pleasure to
any,
be here.
is there anything else you that I missed or you want to add
No, it's
about
pretty
yourself?
good.
Okay,
Pretty good. Yeah, I seem like I've done a lot, yet I feel like I haven't done much. So, oh, good.
that sometimes is the kind of the same coin. It depends on the space we're occupying, but you
Hmm.
definitely have quite a diverse background, and that's why I brought the topic of this integration versus the balance. Is that in my conversations with you, I've seen quite a bit of integration happening where you're really heavily you know your values and you really weave them into everything you do in our conversations, work life, that we're pertaining work and life. And so that's why I wanted to continue our conversation and just share some of our thoughts and our topics that we've covered. So the first question I have for us is, in your opinion, how has the traditional concept of work-life balance evolve in today's dynamic work environment? How do you look at it?
Um, so I grew up, and when I joined the workforce, I'm a Gen X. There's always, I was told, you have a personal life and you have a work life. So kind of like,
Yep.
and you have a family life, these kind of separate lives. Um, and lately, I mean, just through my journey, through quite a lot of changes in my life as well, and I guess with what happened over the past few years with the pandemic, um, I have realized something for myself that there's only one life,
Mm-hmm.
and us, each and every one of us, have this one life on Earth. What we do with it over 24 hours per day that we have is really like it's just a matter of experiencing this life, whether we call it work. And I've heard a work or your hobby and whatnot, and I have personally discovered that look, this is that's what you do if it's work. People tend to think that work is something that you not enjoy and your hobby is something different, but it's almost
Mm-hmm.
impossible to combine the two. And actually, if something that you enjoy doing align with your value you mentioned, it's coming your passion when you get excited. Um,
Excited, yeah.
yeah, and I mean that's it. That's not work because that's just what you do with your time. Um, of course, I'm not saying that when we there's no challenges if we do everything we love because there's things that when I started because I mean as you were aware, I have a lot of ideas. And sometimes I was like, where's this coming from? And no one had done it before. And everybody said, it's not going to work and this and that. Um, and then I start working on it, and it was like, oh, I hit roadblock as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes just want to give up or, let's move on. So when you work towards something you loved or you believed in, doesn't mean it's always rosy. There's up and down, but I wouldn't necessarily say, this is work and this is my personal life or my hobby, and that's different. And of course, the best will be doing what you love, and the energy you create can help support your living as well,
Yeah,
like making money, aka making money. That would be perfect. And I believe it's possible.
absolutely.
So
We
there's only
eliminate.
one life. If how I see these changes is like instead of many different lives, you only have one life. And how do you balance? I mean, balance is also a tricky word. It's like for me, balance is like pull back because when you enjoy
Mhm.
something and when you're passionate and you're excited, you want to get things, see your ideas turn into reality. You can work very hard as well. Um, but hey, it's balance is about. Sometimes it's like okay, what am I? Do I enjoy it? Do I need to take a break? My body is telling me something as well. So that's the difference for me in terms of I would say work-life balance, the traditional versus
Yeah,
how it's evolved now.
absolutely. And you brought some things of saying when we work towards or when we're engaged in something that really matters to us, it doesn't
Mm.
mean it's an easy road to get there, right? When we're trying to
Yes.
create the impact, but it's got to be meaningful. Because when it's meaningful, it's a very different energy that's behind it for us, and we move it obviously with a different. But it doesn't mean we don't face challenges. It doesn't mean that we don't have roadblocks. It's just at the end of the day we go, why am I doing this? What's kind of like what's in it for me? Why is it making a difference to my one, as Mary Oliver would say, to my one precious life? And so that's definitely you. I just wanted to highlight that as well. Thank you. Can you share a personal experience where you felt the need to go beyond balance and embrace integration, or just kind of a personal example?
Um, beyond balance, I get the key. My personal experience is getting to understand who I am and
Mm-hmm.
accepting who I am. That's the key part for me in the integration process. When you asked me, actually, when you were talking about integration, I was actually pondering what's this integration mean, and does that mean that I'm kind of this body and I have different pieces of me every out there doing different things, and then how do I bring it back? So I like to visualize things as well.
Yeah.
So I thought about that, and then I was like, oh, I went through that, and for me that it's actually happened like that. I have so many
Mm-hmm.
pieces out there, have so many, pursuing so many different direction that at one point I was like, what am I doing? Why is doing this? How come I don't feel this great, but I feel like I'm responsible? And I was just all over the place. I'm not sure that's the feeling, even though outside, a lot of people looked at me as a leader. I was like, oh, she's
She knows what she's
independent,
doing.
she's
Yeah.
confident, she knows what she's doing. And then inside, it was like this whole things. I was like, oh, okay, that's something is not right. And integration for me, first thing was to, and I'm kind of a stubborn person. It took some a major event for me to sit still and go within. So it started with connecting with myself, and processing and observing my emotion, that what the inside that was going on, because certainly it had told me something. And because of the responsibility, you know, I was very focused on work. I see my work as my also my family too. I felt I was responsible for everybody, and I had my family as well, and then I was living abroad. So there's
Mhm.
some when it kind of like when you try to balance the way you use balance, like okay, I try to make a trip home at least once a year to see my parents, and taking care of my clients, taking care of my team, grow my team, and then at the end, what
Very
happened
true.
to me was like, who's taking care of me? What was going on? So that internal look at feelings that as masculine energy
Mhm.
leaders, when we do it or when we stand up, it's very easy to say, "Yep, I can do this." I take charge, I make decision, I can push, and I have no idea where I harness that energy from, and I push through until something major happened, and I was like, "Uh oh."
Mhm.
It kind of and follow that was, of course, the pandemic, which was an unexpected shock, for me, not just for me, but I think for everybody as well.
Yeah.
And that where integration started for me
So
is
what I'm
to
yeah,
get to know myself
yeah.
first.
It
And I'm
started,
still
yeah,
getting to know myself.
yeah.
I started journey. I don't
Um,
know when it's gonna end. um, but yeah, I enjoy it so far.
no, absolutely, definitely. What I'm also hearing, it starts with us internal work. However, sometimes, fortunately or unfortunately, it's generated, or it's kind of the catalyst, the trigger is something, could be something quite painful, when we finally have to wake up and start paying attention, because you're saying, like, now you look back in retrospect saying, I'm not sure where I got all that energy. Well, you did what was expected of you, and you did it well, because as you just mentioned, I'm stubborn. It's like, well, that comes in different variations of how that stubbornness manifests, right? How it exhibits. It is also exhibits through perseverance. You're like, no, this is what I'm supposed to do and expected to. I'll do this. My parents live abroad, because it's very similar for me. Is that my parents live quite far away, and so for me, it's always that choice. Do I go there to see my parents, or do I do something else, or not do that? And so that place that we play until some pause is initiated in some ways, which I wish sometimes I go, well, I wish I just paid attention to this just a little bit more. And I think for me, an example would be a little simpler in a way. So the work-life balance for me before I went into my own leadership coaching is I worked for an organization. And so for me, even as a leader, it was easier. When I closed this computer, my work was like, I literally actually had really good boundaries to, like, not checking my email on my phone. Like, I did not have work email on my phone. So once I closed the computer, that's done, unless it's an emergency and people knew where to find me. But when I started working for myself and working with clients, it just became a never ending thing. And so whether it's the computer or not computer open, and social media, and just like this thing, it's like LinkedIn, checking it in and out. That's the power. I thought, okay, how do I did choose, this is my choice, to step into something different than working for an organization, working for myself. How do I build a business, yet still navigate all parts of my life without losing myself, right, in it? Or getting back into that burnout mode of working all the time in some ways. So it's like finding the values that draw. And for me, like, one of my fundamental values is the well-being. And so when I see, as you were saying, like, when I'm paying attention to how I feel, and whether through the day or at the end of the day, I don't feel great. And I go, what
Mm.
is missing? What is happening here? This is just not, that's not working. And so that's, for me, I thought, okay, how do I not have the rigid boundaries, but just flow with it, but mindfully, right? Because then it's still one life. And how do I
Yeah.
spend that time? Yeah.
Also, a
Um,
part of that integrate. Yeah, I
Go
was
ahead.
just saying that you mentioned burnt out. I mean, I didn't know I
Mhm.
was on the verge of burning out, because obviously, I was, my mode was take a break, go travel. So travel is my thing where I refresh and recharge. Um, and now I realize, oh, maybe I'll just escape things, and instead of dealing with it or observing it.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then
We,
during the pandemic, of course, cannot go anywhere. It kind of
yeah.
really forced me to sit still and really observe and start
Mhm.
integrating. It's like, what is all these? And the other thing you mentioned also is the responsibility and what is expected of us. That's
Yes.
one thing. The other thing I have discovered is the conditioning
Yeah.
that was put upon us during our growing up,
Yes. Our culture is where we came from.
culture,
Mhm.
and the values we absorb, and we learn, or I have learned values external from other people, from
Yeah.
society, from my culture, my family, and things like that. But I was like, what are my values? My personal values.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, that was another discovery for myself.
Yeah, and I think in that regard, it's like we're kind of rolling into because we were talking about, and what I was curious is like in what ways can integrating, and you mentioned a little bit, but in what ways can integrating that whole the work personal, through the values can lead to creativity and innovation. Um, yeah, how do you see that?
Um, I well, there was again another belief, or I guess a false belief before that, you creative only when you're certain field. In fact, I believe everybody have is creative in their
It's
own way.
creative. Yes.
Um, and we had that freedom. It's just that the conditioning I mentioned before was a lot of it was, well, you are doing this, so and you are this personality type and yada yada, and so you better suitable for this job, or you just be safe and get this job. And if you are an accountant, you're not creative. Um, that kind of stereotype. But
Mm-hmm.
everybody, I believe, is have a creativity within them. So going back to value, and one of the concept I came across briefly, which is the ikigai, a
Yep.
Japanese concept, and it talked about, you know, identifying really what you're good at. And at one point, I was like, "What am I good at?" So I went around and asked people. I was like, "What am I good at?"
That's
Sometimes I
actually
still ask,
that's a perfect way to find out. Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I was like, "Oh, you observe like what am I good at?" And then you go internal, and I check with myself. I go with it and say, "Oh, am I good at that? Does it come to me naturally?" And then what my passion, so what do I like to do, and interact with society, what I believe that some of the things that society need.
Yeah.
And I believe there was one last thing, which is what you good at, what you loved, what society need. One more thing I forgot.
Yeah. Those are
It
four,
escaped my mind.
circles. Yeah, yeah.
But
That
that
they're
when
going.
so and then from that process, when I ask myself the question of what do I value, and when I find, okay, my value is, well, loved and freedom. That's a two big thing for
Mhm.
me. Whatever you
Yeah.
do, you do it. And love is also covering like things around compassion, um, you know, empathy, all of that
Yeah.
element. So understanding my value, and why do I say, well, what is non-negotiable for me? So those are the two big things. And I've noticed that my values kind of shift as well as I progress, or as I grow as a person.
Correct.
So I
Yeah.
practice those values. For example, being compassion. At one point, I was very, very critical of myself. I still am, much less. Um, not good enough, you're not good enough to do this, or maybe you don't know enough, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So have
Wasn't
compassion on
wasn't fast
actually,
enough. Mine is like I wasn't quick enough or something, like I didn't figure it out
yeah,
quick.
that. So that very, very that critical of myself, and realizing, okay, actually compassion, accepting myself is about letting go a bit of that and understand. For me, I'm the kind of person that I go and understand, where did this come from? Where
Yeah.
did this belief that I have came from? Um, so I went through that process and then practice and put those value into, what I love doing, and what I'm good at. So when I'm operating in alignment with my energy, I just thrive and flow. And one of the things I share with you in my profile, and you read earlier, was I'm buzzing with ideas. I have all idea all the times, and I like to solve problems.
Yeah.
Um, it was something that I was not accepting of myself before.
Oh,
I
that's
didn't accept
interesting because
myself that I have
it comes very
these
naturally
traits.
to you now. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like having that freedom. It's like, okay, when I and when I accept myself of being like free to accept myself, I felt that sense of freedom. So, and I feel the acceptance and the love and reciprocation from other people. And then
Hmm.
going back to saying, okay, so this is coco my talents and what I'm good at and what I like doing. How can I create something to support the larger community and create potentially a business out of it, or a job out of, or go to work or go into a corporation. So when, for me, when I was, when I started my career, one of the things I always looked at is, what are the company values and how are they aligned? And I did kind of like unconsciously. I was like, I always read that. I was like, oh, what do they believed in? And how's that resonated with me? Because that built the second family, right? That
Correct.
I have a family at home. I go spend 8 hours a day at work. Um, what are the cultures like? Well, at least what they believe.
What they
On the
say,
wall first.
yeah, at the
Yeah,
moment.
what are being written versus also, of course, as we join the organization, is culture is also carry on and um, maintained by people through behavior and action and the way we treat each other as well.
Yeah.
Um, so integration is that it's come from like, okay, what's are my value? How
Hmm.
is that, align with the organization that I want to work with?
Hmm.
What do they stand for? Or if now I'm running my own business, is like, how do I bring this into my business to support, for example, the element of love? These self-employed professional, they love what they're doing, they want to have the freedom. So there's an
Yeah.
alignment there. Um, and I used to have a very rigid routine. And now I'm kind of like, okay, I went through a process where I was beating myself up. Oh, I've got to wake up at 5. I have to do this and, meditate and journal and
I
read.
have to, yeah. I have to do 5 things before my day starts, but they're all good for me.
And I fail. And I was like, actually, that's not me. I still journal. I still read. I still meditate. um, just the way how I do it is different. But what I have is awareness, and this in my mind is set. So when I set that intention, that's important because it kind of build into feel from the heart, and then it go into the mind, and then it kind of drive the action as well through the
Absolutely.
behavior. So I find that if I listen to my body, what's going on, and not and observe myself, and of course everybody I guess is a little bit different. This is just my
Hmm.
experience. um, then yeah, I just feel at peace. I feel peace and joy in the moment. Just little thing.
Yeah.
And when I focus, I just very productive as well. Get a lot of things done in a short amount of time, and that's just me. And then now I have when I take a siesta in the afternoon, my body tell me to do so, I would do so. Versus like before, I had to stuff myself with coffee, and so that's
Yeah.
aligned with freedom for me to be able to do all those things and not rejecting myself.
And I think
And
how we each
yeah,
how we each define, a certain value is actually specific to us. But I wanted to to come back to the ikigai parts, is there are four parts, as you said: what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you couldn't be paid for. So those are the four
Oh,
parts. If you look at it, the paid for part. And so if you look at it, it's like exactly, it's that little, in kind of where they all merge together. But at the end, you're really basing on your values. And you were speaking about freedom, and I was smiling because that is one of my values as well. And I've lived it differently in different circumstances. When I worked in the organization, for me, freedom there meant I needed to have enough autonomy to make decisions. So I needed enough breathing room to have that freedom of kind of decision making, really. And then now, and then, as I was making decision to transition out of the organization to my own, freedom to me is that the choice that I can work from anywhere in the world at the moment, right? And so that freedom changed the quality of it in a sense, but it's still an underlying value that is driving uh, all of my life, actually. Just like what you, I mean, it's very true. I'm also used to, like, I was like, okay, I know all these things are good and I need to do them, and then I was like, I feel rigid again. It's back to this, like, work life, like this compartment. It's like, okay, it's a compartment now. I got to get up, and these are the things, and it's like, this doesn't feel good again. And so it's finding, moving through the routines, or finding the things that work or don't work, but underneath it, the value of well-being is always driving it for me. Like, what works today might not work tomorrow, but I will reflect on that. And I think that kind of brings us to some practical strategies, if you could share, for professionals, for anybody, to integrate, like, to just find and figuring out how to integrate their professional life and personal. And you spoke a little bit about it actually already. And so if you want to, can you want to add to it as well, is that what strategies would you suggest that beyond the ones that you've already shared?
so let's recap how um, the practical tips for me.
Mhm.
What I've is getting to know myself. So
Yep.
do get to know yourself. There's a lot of value in there. Get to know yourself, accept and love yourself, and observe yourself. And from there, there's so much, and set a time for yourself every day. So I do, reading as one of my things that I picked up, even though I used not to, and I was very happy I could pick that up. And that's my kind of gaining knowledge. I enjoy that, and I take my dog for a walk, or it's just a walking meditation. So that's my me time. I don't have to sit and um, you know, sit still and close my eye. I do that as well. But I go for a walk and I observe my feelings, or when something came up for me,
Hmm.
or just something that I react as well, not respond, but react.
Yeah.
I take note of that, and then I journal, so I reflect on that as well. Um, and yeah, and practice saying the thing that you're not used to. For example, express appreciation to others. A smile, put a smile on your face. When you see somebody, just smile, give them a smile for
Mhm.
10, 20 seconds. It's the biggest gift. I find it can light up people. And you feel good as well. And sometimes, I mean, I enjoy gardening. I do planting, even just in-house plant. I
It's
just
very
look at them.
grounding, actually. That practice is very grounding.
Yeah, and I do enjoy when I feel very unstable. I do hug tree now. I go to
So
a
do,
park,
so
take
do
my
I.
shoes off.
I have a tree that I named the tree. It's a Russian name, but I named him.
Yeah, so I will take my shoes off and I let my feet touch the ground on
Mhm.
dirt. Um, and yeah, music, of course, helped me a lot. So it's that crafting that time,
Yes.
and allow that time for myself, or in this case for yourself, to do things that matter to you. So, and take care of, you talk about the well-being, because
Yeah.
when I find myself that when I'm grounded, or when you're grounded,
Hmm.
um, you just can respond to different situation at work, at home, different. And, it's just more calm. For me, is the big thing is I know that I'm calm in those situations.
But
And
like you
these
said, you
practices,
respond and not react. Exactly.
yeah, so response and even, I mean, as I practice, right, that's it's not always I respond. There's time that I react as well, because that was a version of myself that I know that was conditioned like that, and
Yes.
acknowledging that. And yeah, so that's part of compassion and love for myself. It's just accepting myself. You know what? It happened, and that's okay.
Yeah.
What's that mean? How can you correct it? How can you set the boundaries for yourself? And I love also on talking about the boundary. Boundary doesn't mean that's it. You close the door, and that's what I used to believe. You say no, you're done, and that's the end. The boundaries now is like you keep like a fence, and there's a gate, and you can open and close that gate. When
That's
you
exactly
feel
it.
ready, or when I feel ready, I can open that gate again.
Yeah.
And the other thing, one more important thing for me is faith,
Yeah.
believing in something bigger than yourself. So definitely, that helped me a lot. That knowing that I'm not alone, um, there's a sense of belonging, and I'm part of a system of something that is much
It's
bigger than myself.
yeah.
So having faith and having a sense of belief is very important to help. Like sometimes, I was like, I went through a period of burned out. I was like, I hate life.
Well,
And
that's
that was like,
very tunnel. That's a very tunneled space. It's very difficult, very low space.
yeah.
Yes.
So through how this process is having that, that faith, and there's no dead end. That's my
Yeah.
ultimate belief. Doesn't matter what happened. There's always something in there for me to learn, and things will get better.
That's exactly it.
It's things will go up. It will have to go down. You can
Perfect.
observe it and take yourself out of it. You don't have to be part of it and get stuck in it.
That sounds great.
So it just, yeah, it
Yeah.
start with all the techniques. That got to be the belief also.
You
So
gave quite
having those,
yeah, quite a bit
yeah,
of ideas. So I don't want to, I mean, there's not much that I wanted to add other than just reiterate the part about taking time for yourself. As you said, like set a time for yourself, but in that time as well, know thyself. So take time to reflect and take time to figure out your values. And as we said earlier, too, they will change. They
yes,
might change. And that's absolutely okay as
yeah,
long as you know what they are. And so as life is you are creating life, whether you're at work or you're doing work related things or you're doing something with your family, you know where you stand in terms of what matters to you. And I think also is highlight before we wrap this up is that the part is that finding something that matters to you that's bigger than you, right, in this life, or that's bigger, that's driving your mission in this life. And I mean, purpose, but really that really matters to you. So every day when we wake up, it's kind of like what's, and it could be really grand, it could be in whatever capacity or size, but as long as it's really it resonates with you internally, that's all it matters, with your own world. And
yeah,
so yeah, this has been really, and we can go on and on, and so if
yeah,
any,
for sure.
yeah, it's like, and I didn't even have a moment. It's like if anybody had any questions, please put them in. But at this moment, as we're wrapping this up, is that how do people find you if they want to talk to you or anything? Can you tell this Siva's website?
So at the moment, I'm revamping the website as well. So it's at the moment it's sivagroup.com,
Okay,
and yep, trang@sivagroup.com is
but
my
I mean, they can
email.
also find you on LinkedIn here.
LinkedIn, yeah,
Yep.
LinkedIn as well. I'm there, and yeah, I mean, I would love to connect with people, in particular those who've gone through a journey. I like to call them self discovery, or
Mm-hmm.
rediscovery, and we'll talk,
Mm-hmm.
these value. Of course, we'll have 35 minutes, so
Yeah.
we try to cram a whole big topic into a very short period of time. But if this is something that people find useful, we certainly can continue. I'm happy to discuss, share ideas, answer any questions. So that's me. And who knows, maybe if there's an open interest, we can do this again, but narrow it down to a more granular topic in the future.
We can definitely pick a different topic. And the same with me. You can find me on LinkedIn. The website is tatianasanjukovic.com. And as we discuss the topics, there's a monthly newsletter that's going to come out on LinkedIn next week. This is going to be a part of that newsletter, but this topic is just going to get kind of continued, expanded, look through different angles as well. And so if there's any questions, anything that popped up for you, how you reflected that resonated, maybe something that triggered you, terrific. Write all of that. I'm happy to engage and see how whatever mindful tools you might need to lead your one precious life. Remember that. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, and have a good day, everybody.